Hello and welcome to the RA Group Daily Webcast, where every weekday at 3:30 p.m. we host a daily webcast where a panel of experts discuss a wide range of topics to help you survive and thrive during the lockdown. Monday, there is another cooking masterclass with David Sims, our culinary director, and he will be showing us how to make the perfect fish finger sandwiches. Although today we have Alexander from Sassy Cidre telling us all about cider, sassy, and a few sassy cocktails. Please do send through your questions though. Now, over to you, Alexander.
Hello, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here on your webcast. This is my first webcast, first go on Microsoft Teams. Thank you for your technical support, Steph. But yeah, no, after that introduction, I don't sound very French, but Maison Sassy is a French cider, or cidre if you prefer. I get constantly abused for my appalling French accent. But yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you guys. I'm sad I can't see you all, but I understand there might be loads of you, so that would probably make my computer explode. But yeah, it'd be great to take you through a bit on Maison Sassy, the way we do things, the way we make things, when we make our cider, and what we're trying to achieve really, because I know that Compass has had it available for about a year now, and it's growing a lot through our friends at Notcher & Co. And there are a number of great sites within your particular estate which are doing great things with Sassy. So we'll go through a bit on the range. I'm well equipped here, obviously. I hope some of you out there have got some Sassy in front of you, but if not, you know, track it down. You can always reach out to me. I'm sure Steph and Sonia can point you in the right direction. I also know that Steph and Sonia have got very much charged glasses and have done for the last 20 minutes or so, so good work. First things first, cheers. I think that's probably a good way to start things.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I'm just making sure that particular bottle's okay. But yeah, the place to start with Maison Sassy is we are traditional Normandy cider, and basically everywhere in the world claims that they invented cider. You know, the English think we invented it in Somerset or the West Country or in Herefordshire. The Austrians think they invented it, the French think they invented it, the Belgians think they invented it. And the truth is, basically, the Vikings poured through Europe. They were obsessed with apples, and they planted them everywhere they landed, which gave everyone this culture of the apple, which is wonderful because it grows on our little island. It grows in the north of France. It grows all over Europe, and there are now great ciders coming from America and New Zealand, Australia, and all sorts of places. But the thing that really sort of got me personally interested in Sassy is I worked in gin for about 5 years beforehand, which was great fun, and we basically saw this gin bubble explode, you know, the ginaissance as it was called. And you had seen it previously with craft beer. Wine seems to be having a very interesting moment at the moment, and cider just feels like the kind of drink that deserves a renaissance. You know, it's very much more like a wine than it is like a beer, and that's the way we think about it. And also that French heritage helps with all of the French history of winemaking. So the way we make our ciders, so Sassy is actually, obviously the name is a bit of fun and people think it's quite cheeky and it's good to put on menus and stuff, but it's actually named after Chateau de Sassy, which is the most incredible house. Feel free to Google it if you're ever driving through Normandy. Go and visit it. But that is where Xavier, one of the two founders of Sassy, grew up, and it's his family home, Chateau de Sassy. Before he actually set it up, he didn't know what Sassy meant in English, which I think is extraordinary. But thank God, that's quite
brilliant.
Quite a convenient name. But yeah, so he grew up in Normandy and with Pear, who's the other founder, and they were basically mates since they were 3. And at Chateau de Sassy, they've been making cider and Calvados since 1852. So it was very much a family thing. All their mates from the village would come up, they'd pick the apples, they'd press them together. Some were going to cider, some were going to barrels, and they drink it at family occasions. It's very popular around Christmas and New Year in France. And growing up around this sort of lovely culture of it all, they obviously felt very close to it. And they found when they sort of got into professional life, they both worked in finance and traveled around a little bit. They found not only did most other countries not know about French cider, but when they worked in London, the ciders that we make over here aren't necessarily 100% fruit juice, and are very much sort of more alcoholic drinks that can be flavoured with apple juice in a lot of cases. And the point of French cider is that it is 100% apple juice, and that makes a real difference to the flavour, and they couldn't really track down this flavour on their travels. They then subsequently heard that the government was dishing out subsidies for farmers and landowners in Normandy to cut down their apple orchards, which was a bit of a travesty, frankly, because it's such a big part of the heritage of that part of the world. And this was because there was so much unemployment in Normandy. It wasn't a very profitable industry, and they were sort of heartbroken by this and thought, let's try and bring something back to our area. The Normandy savoir-faire is what they're all about, and so that is how the idea of Sassy came about. And this was in 2014. They launched Maison Sassy. I think they were sort of budding entrepreneurs from boyhood. I know in the .com boom, they when they were about sort of 14, 15, they went to their parents saying, we're going to set up a business and take over the world, and I think they got laughed out of the room. But then subsequently, a decade later, here we are, and they have this cool cider brand. So it's all come back to where it should be. Now, the thing that's special about our ciders is there are a number of things. So first of all, which is good to remember when you guys are talking to people who might be interested in cider and buying drinks from across your bars and in your restaurants and venues, is Sassy is 100% fruit juice. Like I said before, there's no added water, there is no added sugar, there are no preservatives, no colorings, no additives, nothing like that. So it's 100% natural, which of course everyone is very keen on right now. It is all handcrafted in Normandy, very close to the chateau, and we use exclusively cider apples. So you have dessert apples, and you have cooking apples, you have eating apples, and you have cider apples, which are obviously specifically for cider. And we use about 20 different varieties of apples and pears in our range that we're going to go through in a minute, and that gives it a real complexity of character, which is quite fun. Again, it's a lot like talking about a wine. In terms of where we grow it, the apples themselves grow, they're called pommiers au tige, which are special trees which require 8 years to grow and produce the fruit, which will give you a much more complex, mature kind of flavour.
Wow, that's quite the investment in years there.
It's it's one of these things, again, having worked in craft gin, and I love, I'm a huge fan of all areas of the drinks industry. It seems to me that the more inconvenient a production method, quite often the better the products, and I'm sure you'll agree. Yeah, so they say 8 years to grow. I mean, the other mad thing is per hectare, we only put 150 trees in, whereas a lot of other producers will put up to 600 trees per hectare.
Wow.
So you're not getting as much out of the land, but you're getting a far higher quality of fruit juice at the end of the day. We also, you'll see, I admit it looks quite fun, these automatic things which shake the trees in a lot of cider producing parts of the world, but we won't let them fall off naturally so that they're naturally matured. And then we just pick them off the ground. We even keep sheep in all the paddocks to make sure the grass is nice and short, so that they don't get rotten too quickly. But we then use a pneumatic press, so much more the way you would press grapes, in champagne, for example. And that gives us 80% of the juice, and it doesn't crush in the pips as well. I'm sure you've all heard the sort of the funny rumours or old wives' tale of apple pips have got cyanide in, or if you eat apple pips, it's very bad for you. Well, it's true. It's the same with a lot of fruits, whether it's a slowberry or a damson or a plum or these kinds of things as well. They have these almond shape and very almond heavy in flavour sense, and that is poisonous. So that's another reason why we use the press, to keep that out. Note to all yourselves there.
Good to know.
But yeah, so once we've done that, we use we have 3 in our range. So why don't we go through those? Sound good?
Sounds fantastic.
Let's start with our poire. So poire being French for pear. Not allowed to actually call this a cider, but it is a cider. Now, harking back to that sort of wine style, we put it in a wine glass. If you want to put ice in, feel free. We suggest not to try and get a bit more out of the flavour, but it's pretty damn hot at the moment, so I don't blame you if you do. Now, this here, we use 12 pear varieties. And it's all grown on these loam and clay soils, which again, because it's the proximity to the forest, it gives it kind of a distinct kind of acidity. And this is 2.5%. So it plays in that low ABV space, which of course is very on trend. We've all seen it growing like crazy since Seedlip came out of the woodwork, and particularly this year. And probably because, you know, we might all be drinking too much in lockdown, might be a good idea every now and then. But 2.5%. We often think of our Pear as a low ABV alternative to Prosecco. A lot of people have had success at putting this in cocktails. We were talking earlier, Sonia, Steph and I, about sort of a Tom Collins alternative. We call it the Sassy Pear Spritz, which is a bit of a winner. Think gin, sugar, lemon, topped with the Sassy Pear here. And yeah, dangerously refreshing, I would say. But yeah, this was developed really to be an aperitif, something you have before dinner, something to refresh the palate, and that is helped by not only the pear, the acidity, and also that low ABV nature. Cheers.
I think it's actually my favourite. I'd say. Cheers. Yeah, you know, it's exactly how you've described it. It's super refreshing, and it does absolutely cleanse the palate. I love it. I think of the ones that I've tasted so far, this is definitely my favourite. It has that nice acidic, clean finish. I really love it.
Brilliant.
This is my favourite.
I think, well, I know that this one is the lowest calorific cider of our range. Interestingly, cider is generally 30% less sugar than beer and 50% less than wine. Which is crazy, but it is a kind of lower calorie drink, which is.
I love it even more now.
Yeah, I'm trying to make it feel guilt-free for you.
Guilt-free Friday.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point, actually. But on the development of these flavors, I mean, when Xavier and Pierre Manuel started Sassy, they thought it was a great idea. Their friends thought they were completely bonkers, to be honest, and they started developing the flavors, and I think it was a complete disaster, and they always ended up last on the taste test, and it wasn't working out at all until they started really blending the different varieties of their apples and pears, and then blending with a cellar master very close to the chateau is still very much involved. They came up with these three expressions that we're going through today. And the other person that was very influential in this was Alain Ducasse. And Alain Ducasse is the most Michelin-starred chef in the world, him and Joel Robuchon. And his group wine sommelier, who sadly died fairly recently, but was an absolute hero of the wine world. He was the one who helped develop these flavors. And we always talk of them as aperitifs, but also they pair brilliantly with food. And that's a really charming kind of way of looking at it. And that's something that is very much part of the birth of Sassy, was thinking of it as a gastronomic cider, thinking of it like wine, putting it in the wine glass and pairing it with food. And the first places you could ever buy Sassy in 2014, 2015 were the Michelin-star restaurants of Paris, from Robuchon, Ducasse, etc.
That's fascinating.
So yeah, pretty cool, and great for the heritage of us as a brand as well. Good. Cheers again. Glad you like that one. I think the next place to go is to the classic Cidre Brut, which is, I suppose it's our most classic expression. It is 5.2%, so slightly more pokey, a bit more of a classic cider ABV. And this one really is our kind of nod and homage to traditional Normandy cider. Normandy cider, when people think of it, they usually think of it with the champagne style cork, the wire around it, and being in a 75 cl format. We put all of our bottles in 75 cl format and all of them in 33 cl format as well. And Sassy was one of the first French ciders to actually put it in that smaller format to make it easier to drink. But like I say, I like it in this bottle with the classic one, just as a bit of an homage to its roots. Grown in the same soil. It's 22 apple varieties, so you get that added complexity. And it's super rich. You know, you can tell by the color. If you look at it next to the Pear, you know, it's so much richer in color and much deeper. Bear in mind, this hasn't been on oak. This is purely down to the fact that it's 100% fruit juice.
Wow.
And I'm sure if you compare it to a lot of the ciders that we all grew up drinking, or the first stuff we had out of a tap, for example, the color is very different.
Definitely.
Yeah. But then again, again, it's 100% fruit juice. It's pretty low on calorie count. I should also point out that, you know, very much on trend at the moment, but they're all suitable for vegans and vegetarians, etc. And they are all technically organic. Have you guys got this one to try? Or have you tried it?
I've tried it. I don't have it to try with me right now. Yeah. I'm on the next one.
You're on the next one already? Okay, well, let's go there, shall we? Right. So, try the Brut in your own time. We're going to the rosé. So this one, the rosé is quite cool. So the color is completely natural, and it comes from a particular type of apple called a Geneva crab apple. And this was an apple that Xavier, founder of Sassy, his grandfather actually imported it over from Canada to Europe and was the first person to do so. And if you Google a Geneva crab apple, the flesh is bright pink, and they're tiny little crab apples as well. They're really cool little things. So that's one of 18 apple varieties that goes into this. If you use the crab apple on its own, trust me, we've tried. It's seriously kind of acidic, a little bit too punchy for any normal person's palate. So we blend that out with 18 apple varieties, and this is what we get. The other interesting thing about this one is that, again, it plays in that low ABV space. It's 3%. I'm going to try it as well, just to make sure, as always.
This one's really nice. I know you're drinking it now, aren't you, Steph?
Yeah. I've done a little bit of a cheeky thing here. I've turned it into a cocktail that Alexander sent me earlier. It's a rosé Negroni, I think it's called. Is that correct?
It has a number of names. I'm sure you're all aware of the Negroni Spagliato, but it's our twist on that. It's often gets called a French Negroni on our cocktail menus. Campari, sweet vermouth, whatever you want to call it, topped up with Sassy Rosé.
Absolutely delicious and perfect for a Friday afternoon with the sun shining.
Awesome. Yeah, there are a few fun things you can play with cocktails with this. Again, I suppose it is quite spritzy. That's what it lends itself to. And pink seems to be the color that is getting a huge amount of press at the moment. So yeah.
We've got a question here from Daniel that's asking, how long does it take to ferment?
That is a great question, to which I don't know off the top of my head. Not a huge amount of time. I think it rests for 3 weeks in the baskets. When they're originally picked, we leave them in the baskets for 3 weeks. And then after that, they rest in the vats. I will find out for you and get back to you on that one.
Cool.
Fantastic. And Daniel has sent another one. Said,
hit me.
Isn't it normally an indication that cider is on the turn when the color darkens? Very
interesting. I haven't actually come around to that yet because it doesn't last long enough in my fridge. They tend to last. They last in bottle for us around 2 years. In terms of the darkness of the liquid here, I've never seen any Sassy darken in colour from our range at any point. I'm sure that might well be true, but this is the colour it comes out at, being 100% fruit juice.
Yeah.
You know, you get much lighter colours from dialing it down with water and whatever else, other preservatives that you might add to it in the keg, which is why you'll see, I suppose, a cheaper cider being much lighter in colour. So yeah, I can see that being very much the case, but I don't know the science behind it.
Fair enough. Do we have any more questions? Let's have a look.
I might mention we have another cider, interestingly, which is we call the Sassy Organic. The only difference being we we've got certified paperwork for the organic, etc. It's a lot more complicated in France to do that, but it's a demi-sec 4% cider, which we haven't officially launched yet. We were planning to launch it on keg at the end of March, and obviously that was not ideal timing given the COVID-19 situation. So that's very much still the plan. And that's one to watch out for, depending on what type of cider you like. When people visit the chateau, which is very much on the cards, and we always do that for incentive prizes, so it'd be great to do that with you guys at some point. But when people visit, it is definitely the most popular cider in the range is the organic, and it's been going from strength to strength in France. We just haven't had it over here yet, so watch this space. You'll be seeing that on tap, and I know I've spoken with a few sites in your estate about that, but it would be very exciting. It will be available with Inotra and Co, and it's pretty good stuff. So
that sounds amazing. I have a personal question around the organic, because I know in wine, to actually be certified organic, it is quite a process. Is it the same sort of process for cider, or is there a slightly different one?
Basically, with cider itself, it's not down to any cider laws. It's actually down to the French government in terms of how we certify that. But as with all these things, there's always more certifications you can get and more paperwork you can get. Being 100% fruit juice grown in these paddocks in Normandy, it is all inherently organic as well. It's how much you're willing to pay at the end of the day. There's so many
wine producers that just don't bother anymore.
Exactly, and a huge amount of them are organic. I suppose you can say the same with whatever you're putting on the bottle. It's like when spirits put on that they're gluten free or allergen free and things like that. Distillation removes all of those allergens anyway. So it's kinds of things. It's how you want to market yourself. And we realized we weren't talking about that organic stuff enough, and this opportunity came up to launch the new demi-sec, and it's tasting pretty awesome, so that's why we went for it.
That's incredible. And could you make it biodynamic as well? Is that something in the cider world, or is that just quite bespoke to wine? I've never actually asked that question before.
No, I mean, it's not something that's really come up. It's very much not on my radar. I know that it's obviously a huge thing within wine. I suppose cider has the opportunity, and that's something that I find very interesting, and something that we as a company find very interesting, is as wine kind of explodes and people are exploring different types of wine, cider can fall into that trend, whether it be the size of the bottles, the way that the apples are grown, the way that the cider is actually made is much more similar to wine, and with people talking about sparkling reds and pet nats and stuff like that. It's an exciting time to kind of branch out and kind of put cider on the map, as it were, as a sophisticated product.
For sure, that's amazing.
I've got a question as well, just from my own, just for myself. So we are always talking about different wines being paired with different foods or different parts of the meal. If you had to pair each of the range with either the starter, at what point in the meal would you pair them with, and what would you pair them with?
Great question.
Great question. I mean, I personally, like we said, the poire is such a great aperitif. It's very, very light. People talk about putting it with fish and things like that. In particular, whitefish being the obvious one. But yeah, I mean, when I started working with Sassy, and I had an eye on them for a couple of years, I was always very dubious of the poire. I thought in my head, I'm not a huge fan of pear, but I would say that this now is my favourite. And so yeah, I would start the meal with that. Super refreshing. It's not going to muck about with your palate at all. The classic cider brut is far richer in flavour, so you want to be pairing that with something a little bit more punchy and a bit more meaty. It does have that farmyardy element. All those WSET buzzwords that you're taught, kind of farmyard, leather, forest floor, that kind of stuff.
Like a Cabernet Sauvignon.
You know it. You know the stuff much better than I do, Steph. I know, but that's kind of where you go with the brut. And then the rosé is actually still used in a number of puddings in a couple of restaurants in Paris. but it pairs beautifully with sweeter stuff. It is inherently much sweeter because of that Geneva crabapple and the colour. So that's the way I would order them. We have another cider which I haven't gotten again today, which is called the small batch, which is a little bit more niche and worth keeping an eye out for. But that is super dry, punchy, rich, old school cider. It's very much an acquired taste. We tend to find that bartenders, bar managers, people in the trade adore it, but it might be a little bit too much for the average punter. But I think in my first week I was doing a tasting with a great guy called Sim in our team, and he said try it with Parmigiano, or Parmesan, and it's incredible. It's sort of ridiculous how well it pairs.
Oh, wow.
So you can put it with cheese as well with that rich flavour.
Yeah,
I think we're going to have to do an entire tasting menu with the ciders.
Yeah, why the hell not? Yeah, let's do it. Once we're all allowed out, we can have an absolute fiesta.
Def.
And can I ask you guys, so within your estates, how is cider performing? Can you see interesting things happening within the cider category?
More and more from my side. I mean, obviously the restaurants in our portfolio, the ciders and the bars, it works a little bit easier per se, because the hospitality side, it is sort of a hard sell, because you don't get too much of the interaction where you can hand sell something.
Of course.
But especially with the Pear, which I've got a bottle of here too, being that 2.5%, I think as a Prosecco or a bubbles alternative, this will be perfect in that space for like a lunchtime or even an evening event, just because it is that slightly lighter. And I think,
Great. I mean, that's somewhere that I've been driving, how we sell it in is you have the option of bottomless brunch is a kind of obvious one.
Yeah.
But it is a cheaper product than your wines and your sparkling wines. It's got a lower ABV, but with the larger format and the champagne cork, it still has that celebratory bit of at table theatre, etc. Exactly, everyone having a bit of a good time, popping bottles, and that's what we want. So that's one way of doing it. And again, putting it in ice buckets on the end of a bar where you might have a champagne or a prosecco or any other sparklings. Again, it's a slightly lower ABV option.
Because I know people are so focused on that lower ABV option at the moment in their business, in the industry in general.
Yeah, sure. It's getting talked about more and more. I mean, I think it was something like 40 or 50 new non-alcoholic spirits last year alone, but about 250 applications for businesses to do it. So it's definitely a growing concern. Definitely.
Well, I think that is everything we have today. Thank you so much, Alexander. That was absolutely fascinating. I know I've learned more about cider today than I should have known it before, let's be honest. But I'm going to very much enjoy my French Negroni this afternoon. We do hope that you'll join us on Monday for the cooking masterclass with David Sims, our culinary director, and the perfect fish finger sandwiches. Meanwhile, for more information about our program of discussions, please go to RA Group's website at www.ragroup.co.uk/news to download the broadcast links. Meanwhile, if you have any questions or suggestions about how you can get involved, please email gavin.goody@ragroup.co.uk. Thank you for joining us today. Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you all on Monday, same time, same place.